But then the fact that I was based in Kenya and dealing with refugees is the one that, obviously that's why I stayed.
Well, you train as a lawyer.
Yes.
You had your master's in law.
Yeah, with a specialization in international law.
Okay, then you switched to diplomacy.
Yes, well, surely being a UN diplomat, you have a little bit of a taste to it, although that's for the United Nations, it's different than representing a country and being based somewhere else. Yeah. It's after my involvement as protection officer with the refugees, I got a lot of involvement, especially with Ugandans. Yes, thousands were there from Uganda. Okay, yes, because they were fleeing away from the Obote regime. President Museveni at that time was a guerrilla leader. He was fighting.
The second coming of Obote.
That was the second coming of Obote. Okay. Yes, after Amin's period. Amin was ousted in 1979, and then Obote came back. And the elections did not go very well and honestly. So then President Museveni decided to fight a guerrilla war, and he was the leader at that time of the national resistance movement. Okay. Yes, and then, there was Obote was indeed ousted in July '85, and in that period, by that time I was no longer working with the UN because I had worked there for 3 years, and I decided to stay in Kenya. Okay. And I became a consultant, marketing and legal consultant, representing Dutch companies in Kenya and in Sudan and in Tanzania. So I was traveling the region. But the Ugandans had a terribly difficult time in the time that I was with the UN, and people were sometimes being kidnapped and then put across the border in Kenya. Okay. So then I had to really take care. Sort of the refugees had my telephone number in their pockets, like if they were picked up by police. I don't know how many times I had to go to police stations and try and find out whether some Ugandans had been detained. Then they would be, charged with illegal entry or legal stay in Kenya, and I had to, of course, rectify that. So indeed, I had to assist a few refugees.
Was that in your capacity as a
protection officer?
From the UN.
From the UN, yes.
Then later you became a marketing consultant to Dutch.
Yes, that was my own company. I started to set it up.
How did you get involved with the NRM then?
Yes, well, during the period that I was working for the UN, of course, there were already many sympathizers of the movement, and there were other movements, other fractions who were also fighting the Obote government. But I believe that the national resistance movement was the most serious one. Okay. And I believed in their principles, and so when Obote, now the second time that he was in power, he was ousted by another military leader called Tito Okello, and that is when Museveni came to Nairobi, and then there were peace talks, which were actually chaired by the former President Moi of Kenya. And that is when I met President Museveni, the guerrilla leader at that time, for the first time.
And what capacity were you attending the meetings?
No. He was actually calling on me because I'd assisted his wife to go to, the wife and children go to Sweden. And there were some other Ugandans that I helped also to go to Sweden.
So there were more personal relationships you had with them?
Well, he wanted to thank me for what I had done for the Ugandan people, and because I had been so closely involved with other embassies, he asked me to establish some contacts for the movement. So it's at that time that I started working with those ones who were in the external committee and making contacts with the various embassies, especially the Western embassies, who were very wary of this guerrilla leader. He was supposed to be a Marxist, socialist, and whatever isms you could attribute to him. So that sort of wrong perception had to be broken. And
I was going to ask in what capacity you function.
No, it's just a sympathizer of the movement, and became very closely involved, and became a member of the movement.
You assisted at the diplomatic
level, but in my private capacity. As I said, by that time I was no longer with the UN.
You were not a member of the NRM?
Oh yes, of course, yes, at that time.
You joined them?
Yes, yes.
How did they appreciate you?
Yeah, for sure. I think otherwise, I don't think they would have had the confidence in me representing Uganda here in.
But what attracted you to the NRM?
I think it was their ideas, their objectives were very basic and very genuine. Basic in terms of bringing back human rights and giving people peace and security. And this is something that had been lacking, as you know, during the Idi Amin period, and then Obote too. Then there were some other, presidents then. So there was no security, and people had no confidence in the future. And they were ruling by the gun. So that is why I think bringing back peace and security, and then uniting the country, which was very divided.
You mentioned that there were more guerrilla groups involved.
Yes.
Why did you choose the NRM then?
No, I think they were the most serious one. The others were small, and then they were joining, making some liaison with the others, the alliances, and then they're breaking away again. And really, the NRM had a system going. They were,
disciplined.
Yeah, they were disciplined, extremely disciplined. And of course, the only thing was to build up Uganda and give people back the rights, the civil rights that they had lost for so many years. And I think then building up the country, building an economy, and simple things is something that most people believed in.
Did you share the Marxist or socialist tendencies?
No, but it was okay. That is what they learned in the bush, and those were some of the books they read. But and then most governments were, as I said, a bit worried. They say, "Oh, Museveni, when he comes into power, he's going to nationalize all companies and state." Making it states.
Was that not a fear you shared?
No, not at all. Well,
why?
Maybe no, because I knew the people.
Because you were representing Dutch companies in East Africa.
Yes.
And now you joined the Marxist organization.
No, they were not Marxist or Leninist. That was the label they were given. But just because their views and being for the people, being for Africa, and maybe, and then it appeared later on that all these sort of worries that the Western world had about Museveni starting. Not at all, and that is why I had from the very beginning. I think when people are ignorant and they don't talk to the people and what they want for us Africans and for us Ugandans in particular, then you can't judge them. So just don't listen to what people are saying, but be there, talk to the people, and that is how eventually people. Yeah, the Uganda government managed to gain a lot of confidence.
But how did they gain confidence in you to repose so much confidence in you? What did you do?
I think when in times in need, and that was a very difficult situation where people are being taken from the streets or from their houses in Kenya to be repatriated to a country where they were fearing prosecution. I think that is very serious. I think I know what it is to be a refugee, having closely been linked with them, and it's terrible to be dislodged from everything that is familiar, to start living in a neighboring country, and even when you are there, then you think you're being protected. You're not sure what's going to happen.
Were there no times you were afraid for your own life?
No. Well, I guess you're a bit young and unexperienced. I didn't see much danger.
You said people just they disappear from the street. They were picked up by the secret police.
Some of them, yes.
But didn't happen in your case?
No, in my case, yes, I know that I was being quite followed quite closely. I guess I didn't know it at the time, but of course they were quite anxious to see what this woman was doing, and so that's true. That is absolutely
true. For many people, Uganda is always associated with brutality, violence, starting from Idi Amin, Obote, and can you share with us some of the dynamics of that is responsible for those turbulent times?
Well, I think mostly it's the bad leadership that we've had, which caused people to act differently. I think Ugandans are as peaceful, peace-loving people as any other Africans. I don't think that they are, more inclined to war than others. Not at all. In fact, we have had now a peaceful Uganda, as you know, for over 25 years. So it shows that it's not necessary to have a war as long as you have good leadership and people's rights are being protected. But in the past, when you're going through a roadblock which is manned by soldiers, robbing you of everything until you're just in your underwear, and if you're lucky, you were not taken to a police station or what, so that your relatives had to bribe you out. This was a kind of government that had been there for a few decades. So I think when people were so relieved in 1986 when NRM came into power, that this clean government, even though It was fantastic.
Okay. Were you there during the Obote and the
No.
You never visited Uganda?
No, I wasn't there.
Oh, okay.
No.
So, I'm thinking of asking how do you compare the situation now to what existed in those days?
Yes, I think having closely talked and discussed issues with Ugandans when I was in Kenya, they were telling me about the bad economic situation. But when I actually came there 3 days after liberation, because the NRM had asked me to rent an aircraft, to hire an aircraft to go, because half the cabinet hadn't been sworn in and were still left behind in Nairobi. So we all came 3 days after the liberation. And we then were received by President Museveni. And I was that time with his wife.
Can you share with us the feelings on those occasions?
Yeah. Unreal almost, unreal. There were no regular flights, so we come there, the president, we went to State House, and president received us, but he hadn't actually stayed there because there were still some pockets of resistance in town, so he was staying at some other unknown location.
And you came with the cabinet?
Yes, at that time the Prime Minister Kiseka, and the wife from Nairobi. Yes.
So for them, it was also a real feeling.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
It was, but then indeed, when you start, it was euphoria everywhere because there were soldiers in the streets and because they were so happy of this new change. Then, and also that the soldiers under President Museveni had behaved so well during roadblocks. You were no longer robbed of everything that you had. They were treating you very well. People couldn't believe it that an army could actually be disciplined. So that was a fantastic experience. And many soldiers who had actually joined the bush were refugees before. So they all said, "Oh, Madame Blaak, don't you recognize me?" I said, "Okay, well, I'm very happy and good that I didn't know you had joined the bush."
Were you the only white person in the cabinet?
Pardon? Sorry?
Were you the only white person who came with
I was not in the cabinet. I was in the. I was just a friend.
Who came with the group?
Yes, of course. Most people thought I was a journalist. Especially because later on I got married to my late husband, who was the Minister of Defense. In the first government of President Museveni. So he had already been sworn in, and later on I got to know him. So of course he was also wondering what is this white we call Mzungu doing here in.
What did you tell him?
And he was thinking I was a journalist. I said no. I've known the Ugandans. They're my friends, and
So people were shocked, surprised to see you.
Yes, sure. Because many people, because of the war, embassies had evacuated their families, so there were only heads of missions left, and there were certainly not many white people left, and certainly not many women, I guess. Yes.
That was 24 years ago, and 25.
Yes.
25 years ago.
Yeah, 25.
What are the qualitative changes you can point out?
Yeah, it's tremendous because, like I said, when Ugandans talked to me when I was in Kenya, saying how the economy was totally destroyed. I couldn't believe it when I came, and I went through the streets, which used to be like an industrial center, an industrial part of town. Everything was, closed. You could just walk into factories. You could see that machines had been looted, and parts had been taken off, which may have been useful. The economy was totally shattered. And I think always it's more difficult to build an economy from a level below zero than it is when you start afresh and from a level. So because you have to get rid of your old machines, often renovations take more time and are more costly as well if you do factories, and start also lobbying for investors to come, and so now 25 years later you can't recognize Kampala. I mean, at that time we used to get a lift here and there from a few vehicles around the streets. You didn't have to look where you were going because there were no vehicles, but now we have traffic jams, and we have
so on the economic front things have improved
tremendously. We have almost achieved in the beginning, until the economic crisis globally, we were almost achieving 10% growth. annually. That is remarkable, very remarkable. And even now, because as you may have heard, we have also found oil and gas. So we think with that prospect, our country is going to do well, and we shall achieve certainly maybe even next year already a 10% growth yet again.
Yeah, the oil, now you mentioned oil.
Yes, yes,
the story of oil in Africa has not been a very positive one. We talk about Angola, Nigeria. So, looking back at this experience, what do you think your country will do differently?
Yes, well, first of all, we are putting laws in place so that the people who owning certain parts of the land are also going to benefit. We are making changes in these laws which are absolutely necessary. We don't want to be exploited by all the foreign companies, and so that's not an easy process, I must admit. The latest laws have not yet been passed through Parliament. As you know, we have just had our presidential and parliamentary elections on 18th of February, so when the new Parliament has been inaugurated, then hopefully we shall be able to deal with that.
Is that why the